Right. Over to you, CJ sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the CLS Conversation. That's on your number one channel on the web world of Chandigarh Literary Society. You can subscribe to our Facebook page and the YouTube to be in touch with eminent writers and authors that we bring to you every week. We are now live on both the channels, YouTube and the Facebook. So, friends, we bring to you today two eminent journalists from the exotic destination of our country, Goa. They have made their mark through their respective writings and a long career as journalists. And perhaps no one else could have done justice to the subject when chronicling the life and exploits of a great political personality of our country who rose from the suburbs of Goa, passed out from IIM Bombay, and ruled the political scenario. And he had been the fourth time Chief Minister of Goa and also the India's Defense Minister later, Mr. Manohar Parihar. In a better person than these two gentlemen who followed and reported who followed and reported the political scenario in Goa and especially the life of late Mr. Manohar Parihar. The book, An Extraordinary Life of Manohar Parihar, has recently been published by Penguin Random House, and it is worth a read. So, friends, as we proceed, let me quickly introduce these two eminent journalists who are in our show. Sadguru Patil is a leading Marathi journalist और मराठी पत्रकारिता में इनका बहुत नाम है और 1995 से ये इन्होंने अपना कैरियर पत्रकारिता में शुरू किया दैनिक गोमतक के साथ एज ए चीफ रिपोर्टर और आजकल ये लोकमत जो कि गोवा के एडिशन के ब्यूरो चीफ हैं और इनका एक कॉलम है जो कि ये रेगुलरली लिखते आ रहे हैं पिछले 10 वर्षों से जो कि बहुत ही पॉपुलर है Saripat. The co-author of this book is Mayabhushan Nagvenkar, who has been a journalist for 22 years and worked in Mumbai, Delhi, and Goa. His bylines have appeared in leading newspapers of the country, including Tehelka, Hindustan Times, The Asian Age, Associated Press, BBC First Post, The Guardian. In fact, I can go on and on. And but something I really liked is that his extremely incisive blog, which he's regularly writing, and has been appropriately named as Pen Pricks. I think it's worth a read. One should go on it online, and especially the budding journalists, and must see as to how investigative journalists or how the social causes can be taken up so effectively to bring about a positive change in our society. So, welcome to you, to Mayabhushan ji and Sadguru. I would like to first of all ask you that how come that you two came together? I think Mayabhushan ji, you had been traveling and had been in Delhi and Bombay earlier. How you decided to come together for this project?
Maya.
Seriously, I've worked out of Goa, but for the last 8-9 years I've been in Goa. I mean, my current work stint is 9 years now, and I've known Sadhguru for a very long time. The idea of this particular book started soon after Sadhguru finished and released his initial Marathi copy of particular soon after his death. So I remember I met him to do a review of the book here, and we got into a conversation, and from there we just took off thinking this book, and I mean this particular personality needs a much more wider readership because, like you described us from being very exotic Goa, very little is known about Goa apart from that exotic element. And Mr. Parikar was the tallest personality in very tangible terms as far as it's concerned. You'd be surprised to know that Goa has not had a full-fledged cabinet minister. Like, there's no Goan politician who's been appointed as a full-fledged union cabinet minister. So Mr. Parrikar was the first.
mm,
That itself is a feat in a big way because politically we are a very insignificant state with 40 MLAs, two Lok Sabha MPs, one Rajya Sabha MP. For someone of from this, backdrop to be appointed as a very senior position in the union cabinet is itself a big deal. And we've said it earlier, we wrote this biography on Parrikar because he was the biggest politician from this in terms of quantifiable. Um, I mean, you could quantify his the how do I put it, his reach in politics.
mm. That's great. But Sadhguruji, I heard you saying at some place कि शायद 25 साल पहले आपने सोचा था कि इनके ऊपर एक बायोग्राफी करने का। नॉर्मली जब बायोग्राफीज प्लान की जाती हैं तो देर आर ऑलवेज सम स्ट्रीक्स of a personality that you want to bring to the light and bring to the fore. So how come that idea so early, though of course he emerged as a charismatic leader of Goa, but then at that time, what did you see, Sadhguruji?
No, no, when he was in opposition,
Hmm.
that time only I had thought of writing on him, because he was a fearless leader. As a
Hmm.
opposition, he contributed lot. As a opposition leader, he contributed lot. Oh, he was four-time chief minister, but prior to that, he was an MLA of Panjim, capital city of Goa, and he was a BJP leader, prominent face of BJP, and he was a leader of opposition in Goa Assembly. So he was a very strong leader, and secondly, he had leadership skills. Right from means I have covered Parrikar for last 23 years until his death.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
seen his whole political journey. He first became MLA of Penjim in 1994, and I started political journalism in 1995. 1995. So we
Right.
have seen him as a MLA, as a leader of opposition, as a four-time chief minister, as a defense minister. उनकी जो लाइफ है, there are many inspiring incidences in his life. There are many extraordinary things in his life. So he was a different kind of material. He was a different kind of political leader. So any journalist or any author, if come to his contact, उसको भी लगता था शायद कि कोई भी जर्नलिस्ट और कोई भी ऑथर अगर उनके संपर्क में आए तो उनको उसको भी लगेगा और लगा होगा कि इनके ऊपर एक अच्छी सी बुक लिखी जाए. A book, good book can be brought out on this personality.
लेकिन उनके जन्म से लेके और अब तक उनके आपको 94 में उनमें क्या चीज ऐसी लगी जो खास बात लगी जो कि आपको
हाँ,
लगा कि ये एक्स्ट्रा ऑर्डिनरी
he was
पर्सनालिटी है?
very studious. Means that time what has happened, that was Congress was ruling in Goa that time. और
राइट.
पॉलिटिशियन के बारे में एक लोगों में, गोवा के लोगों में और बाहर भी एक जनरल इम्प्रेशन था that all politicians are very wealthy. But in this backdrop, Parrikar came as a very simple person, very simple politician. और असेंबली में जाते समय मैंने तब के सभी एमएलए देखे हैं, मिनिस्टर्स देखे हैं. Very few MLAs were well prepared while entering in assembly. Parrikar was at forefront as far as studying the matters are concerned. जो विषय, जो मुद्दा वो उठाते थे असेंबली में, उसका उनका अभ्यास वो करके ही असेंबली हॉल में जाते थे. So हमने एमएलए देखे तब, अरे every MLA was taking assembly session very casually, but Parrikar started that. Parrikar took the assembly session casually. Not only session, when speaker appointed Parrikar on various committees like public accounts committee and other committees, Parrikar is the only MLA who conducted the meetings of all committees very seriously, house committees. He was studying the matter. He was summoning as a chairman of house committees. He was summoning officers, other officials. एंड दिस काइंड यानी उनको जो पार्लियामेंट्री डेमोक्रेसी में उन्होंने जो इंटरेस्ट लिया, दैट इम्प्रेस्ड मी इन 1995, 96, 97, 98, 99.
That's right. Mayabhushan ji, you had been following his political career also, and as I see, what was the highlight of his entire life? If we just look at it from his birth till his last end, what do you feel were the highlights of his personality?
I'll just take off very briefly from where Sadhguru left us. Basically, Parrikar was the Kejriwal of Goa 20, 30 years before Kejriwal started, in terms of his personality and in terms of his approach to politics. Both of them had similar backgrounds, both of them were IITians. They knew how to break down issues and get the most juice out of them. So as opposition MLAs, they were phenomenal. I mean, Parrikar was phenomenal. His biggest ability, sir, was the knack to break down anything which was complicated and present it to people in a simple way. That was the biggest personality trait which worked in his favor. However complicated the issue, he would break it down and convey the issue or convey the seriousness of the issue to the people with ease.
That's
The
right.
second, yeah, sorry, yeah, you were saying, sir.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, the second strength which Parrikar had was this ability to appear very vulnerable. We all know Parrikar as a person who, I mean, locally at least, as a person who was gung ho, who would take on the establishment, who would not spare anyone. At least that was the impression earlier. But he had this very significant ability which is required in politics today, which is to convey a sense of vulnerability, which made him extremely popular, especially among women voters. And women voters were, in a way, I think Sadhguru would agree with me, were very significant to his rise as a politician.
Perhaps because he was connecting.
Yeah, he could drive
He
emotion.
spoke the local dialect.
He spoke the local dialect. He had this very unique way of communication, especially in his speeches or even intrapersonal communications. There is no mold. I mean, we have not seen a mold like a mold in which Parrikar was made, at least in state politics, because he was a very unusual politician. He may have been very sharp. He may have been very good at political strategy, but his strategies were unique, very unique.
That's right. तो सदगुरु जी, जब उनको कहा जाता है कि रैग्स टू रिचेस वाली भी स्टोरी है, कुछ बताएंगे थोड़ा सा उनके जीवन के बारे में कि उनका अर्ली स्कूल टाइम और घर के हालात कैसे थे और कैसे वो IIM पहुंचे?
He studied IIT Mumbai, Powai. So he came from a middle class family. He had no political background. यानी कि उनके घर में कोई आमदार नहीं था, MLA नहीं था, विधायक नहीं था, कोई सरपंच नहीं था, कोई पंचायत मेंबर भी नहीं था. And Parrikar had no political desire. First, he got active in the RSS at the age of 28. At the age of 28, he became a संघ चालक in मापसा city. यानी वो जब पढ़ाई करते थे तब उनके दोस्त संजय वालावलकर और वो संघ शाखा पर जाते थे, RSS की शाखा चलाते थे. So he had interest in RSS शाखा. Secondly, during his school days, he was very intelligent. Means while writing biography, we spoke to many his schoolmates, his classmates, few teachers, and few one or two IIT students also of that particular time. So even during school time, ही वॉज इंटेलिजेंट, यानी उनका एक स्वभाव गुण था, उनका एक नेचर था कि स्कूल के क्लास में ज्यादा बैठना उनको पसंद नहीं था उनको, लेकिन ही वॉज वेरी गुड इन मैथमेटिक्स, ही वॉज वेरी गुड इन साइंस। सो पहले जब उनके एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर एक्टिविटी में वो ज्यादा ध्यान देते थे, इसलिए उनकी माँ ने उनको एक बार उनके मामा के घर में रखा। फ्रॉम मापसा ही वॉज सेंट टू मारगांव एट ड्यूरिंग 9th स्टैंडर्ड। सो उधर भी उनको उन्होंने एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर एक्टिविटी में ज्यादा ध्यान देना शुरू किया है, क्लास में ज्यादा नहीं बैठते थे, लेकिन he was born intelligent, he was born smart। और जब 1991 में जब वो फुल फ्लैश एक्टिव हो गए आरएसएस में, तब उन्होंने कार सेवा में भी भाग लिया। फ्रॉम गोवा 300 वर्कर्स, आरएसएस स्वयंसेवक, वीएचपी स्वयंसेवक were traveled to Ayodhya in 1990 and 1992 twice। So during both times पर्रिकर participated, पर्रिकर traveled to अयोध्या। एक बार उनकी माँ उनके साथ गई, क्यों साथ गई, तो उनको डर लगता था कि पर्रिकर यानी उधर जो हंगामा हो जाएगा अयोध्या में, तो पर्रिकर को कोई, मनोहर जी को कोई प्रॉब्लम ना हो सके। सो ड्यू टू दिस फियर उनकी माँ भी उनके साथ गई अयोध्या में। सेकेंडली देर वॉज एजिटेशन एट गणेशपुरी मापसा, देर वॉज एजिटेशन अबाउट वन टेम्पल डिटी। उस एजिटेशन में भी उन्होंने भाग लिया पर्रिकर ने। he got the nature of fearless nature from his mother, he was also telling, उनकी माँ भी वैसी ही थी, उनको डर नहीं लगता था। तो his father was different kind of person। तो उनकी सिस्टर ने बताया कि मनोहर जी को जो स्वभाव गुण मिला वो उनकी माँ से मिला, लेकिन his
That's right.
father was very honest and his father was a shopkeeper। So he is a son of a shopkeeper who became a defense minister of India। पर्रिकर ऐसे चीफ मिनिस्टर है जो पहले मिनिस्टर नहीं बने, he directly from MLA to leader of opposition and from leader of opposition to chief minister। Yeah,
Very
ऐसे है ट्रेवलिंग। और पॉलिटिक्स में वो जब आए तभी वो कहते थे कि he always lived a simple life as compared to other politicians of that time। So a lot of people admired his simplicity, loved his simplicity, that's what।
And he became a
That's,
defense minister without becoming an MP.
yes, that was another accomplishment, definitely. And of course, he'll be remembered for many reasons as a defense minister also. But Mayabhushanji, I was very happy to see that the first chapter itself, starts with this title of Cancer and the King. And it is very poignant writing and almost, picking up the minutest details of the last days which he spent in the hospital. And as a still, I think many leadership qualities also came to the fore. Were you there when this bridge, the bridge on Mandovi River was inaugurated? I think it was in the last days, maybe 2 months back.
There is a reason why we chose to break the chronology element and fit this chapter right up front, because this was perhaps the most tumultuous year which he had witnessed in his personal life. His family had suffered, and the state of Goa had suffered too, because for a year we had a chief minister who nobody knew how serious he was for most parts of the year. And administration had virtually run to a standstill because of an ailing chief minister, things were not getting cleared. That's the reason we decided to put the chapter up front. Now, as regards the minute details which you rightly pointed out, which really adds character to this book, it's all thanks to this gentleman on my right. So Sadhguru did most of the shopping for details, if you may call it, for the book. I mean, his groundwork for vis-a-vis collection of data for this particular chapter and the rest of the book has been phenomenal. So this question actually should be addressed to him because he's the one who's gone everywhere and got all the data for this book to happen. Sadhguru, why don't you address this one?
Yes.
The
Yeah.
last meeting, the last meeting.
नहीं नहीं हम जब पर्रिकर सिख थे when he was in Mumbai, that time also I had once phoned him when he was in hospital in Mumbai and I had spoken to him. उसके बाद उनका कांटेक्ट किसी से नहीं रहा. एक बार असेंबली में आए तभी मिले थे. लेकिन जो मांडवी ब्रिज इज ए सिग्नेचर प्रोजेक्ट एंड इट वाज अ ड्रीम प्रोजेक्ट ऑफ मनोहर पर्रिकर. थर्ड ब्रिज ऑन मांडवी, इट्स ए थर्ड ब्रिज ऑन रिवर मांडवी. मैं पर्रिकर ने जब कल्पना लाई कि हम तीसरा ब्रिज, थर्ड ब्रिज मांडवी पर बांधेंगे, कंस्ट्रक्शन करेंगे, that time people had laughed. How can you build a three bridges on one river? But it was necessary considering the traffic chaos in the city, capital city. It was necessary and Parrikar had that vision. So उनके कैंसर के जो दिन थे, that time he told Nitin Gadkari that day by day I am feeling unwell now, I am very sick and अब ये कंस्ट्रक्शन और काम भी कंप्लीट हो गया है, so let us first inaugurate it. And I was present during that inauguration. How is the Josh was his famous dialogue during that inauguration time. And
That's right.
people gave him equal response. और लोगों को भी लगा कि इतना इनको सिकनेस होने के बाद he was fighting with cancer, he was experiencing a lot of pains. Despite that, he made a point that he came for the inauguration, he gave a speech. और उनके तभी लोगों को पता चला कि पर्रिकर बहुत सीख गए हैं. जब मैं उनके फैमिली मेंबर को मिला while writing this book, I came to know from his sisters and all कि उनको बहुत दुख होता था और उनकी एक खासियत थी कि he was never telling his pains to his colleague or family members. He used to listen the music. Sudhir Phadke, Jitendra Abhisheki, and other singers. He used to listen them. At that time, यानी उनका जो पेन होता था उससे रिलीफ मिलने के लिए कभी एक दो बार उन्होंने मसाज भी करके लिया. लेकिन उनके जो कैंसर के दिन थे, मेरे उनके बहन ने भी मुझे बताया, दोज वर वेरी ट्रबल, ने बहुत दुख यारे दिन थे. और हमने ऐसा सोचा कि इफ वी स्टार्ट बाय कैंसर चैप्टर दैट इट विल बी प्रॉपर. और मांडवी ब्रिज और उनका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट्स के बारे में, अचीवमेंट्स के बारे में वैसा हमने बहुत लिखा है. लेकिन जो उनके कैंसर का चैप्टर है उनमें न्यूज़पेपर में जो न्यूज़ आता था, बियॉन्ड दैट वी हैव गॉन एंड वी हैव ट्राइड टू पुट फैक्ट्स what really that time what was happening, वो हमने लिखने की कोशिश की है. That's all.
But both of you have been a journalist, and where I think that the emphasis is more on reporting facts or information. How challenging it was to write about those incidents in a different prose, which is perhaps not, you've been following as a rule.
Maya will tell.
Yeah. So the relatively easy part was that we've been following this. Parrikar was a huge newsmaker, so we've been following his political journey very intensely and very closely for the last several years. So the character, in a way, was familiar to us. In course of reportage, so you would also know there's so many things which you can't write, but you know, right? Because journalistic techniques or norms don't allow you to write that kind of information. So we already had insight, we had information. Plus, we had these side stories which we could incorporate in the book. And as far as the style goes, Sadhguru is already an established writer. He's written a couple of books of poetry, and I always wanted to be a writer. So this was a great platform to kind of start that journey, sir.
But
So
at
we've not tried to stick to the journalistic mode of writing, and we've tried our best to make a biography not appear like a biography, right?
yeah, that
We've
makes
not
a very
dramatized it.
interesting reading.
Yeah, I think we focus on detailing, which makes it interesting.
That's true. That is true. That is the best part of it. And uh, and I've seen there are a number of anecdotes which you have mentioned as a RSS volunteer, and what he had been doing there, and especially that incident of fetching water for the workers at a camp.
Hmm.
I believe that that was quite a kind of a quality which he represented at that stage, and perhaps you may not expect it from a youngster uh, today. So, can you relate that story?
So
Yes, Maya.
this was when Parrikar was still in the RSS. He had no stated political ambitions. So RSS का एक मतलब गोवा बहुत छोटा स्टेट है. So what happens is in the RSS um, uh, in the RSS map, Goa and Maharashtra were bunched together till the late 90s, if I'm not mistaken, or early 2000s. So very often, RSS volunteers from the southern district of Maharashtra, Sindhudurg, would travel to Goa, and Goan volunteers would travel to Sindhudurg as part of their exchange program and attend these camps. So there was this particular point where there were around several hundred people attending this camp. Among them were Parrikar and Mr. Lele. Mr. Lele has been quoted very often in the book. He's a very veteran RSS leader from Goa. So a camp would mean you would need a lot of basic provisions, including food and water. So the water supply was connected to the functioning of a particular pump, which was attached to a well. One night the pump failed. That would mean the next day there would be no water for hundreds of volunteers when they wake up in the morning and they need to have do the daily ablutions and baths or whatever. Without telling anybody, Parrikar took it on himself. He was in charge of providing water that particular camp. Without telling anyone, he just so गोवा में पंजाब में तो आपका ये होता है वो I think there's a wooden pulley attached to a rassi and you
True.
turn it like this. Here it's a small metal pulley and you pull it in and there's a rope. You just have to जैसे पतंग उड़ाते हैं वैसे rope खींचना पड़ता है. And the rope is made of coir, coconut coir. It's very rough. So he just kept on at the task manually without telling anyone. And I think for 3-4 hours he pulled that particular pulley and drew as much water as possible. So in the morning when they realized the pump was off, everyone was shocked. What's going to happen now? But when they realized that there was water available, they checked with Parrikar what happened. So Parrikar told them the story, but it was a little difficult to believe. Even for Mr. Lele, who knew Parrikar very well, he was a little shocked. So he asked him, "What's the proof? Show me your hands." So Parrikar had a lot of boils on his hands from the strain which he had to undergo to draw water from that particular well. It is a very inspiring story for any youngster who's been delegated a task
Yeah.
and asked to complete it.
So there is a Malika Basin who is saying that what an amazing, incredible journey. And Ritu Nag asks, what was that one extraordinary leadership skill in Parrikar that made him as a four-time chief minister as well as India's defense minister? What one quality you feel?
Sadhguru Patil.
नहीं, इन 2012 यानी गोवा का जो अगर डेमोग्राफी आपने देखी, गोवा का अगर प्रोफाइल देखा, here there are 23% Catholic population, Catholic voters. If Parrikar was not at the helm of affairs of बीजेपी, अगर पर्रिकर के पास बीजेपी की लीडरशिप नहीं थी गोवा में, तो गोवा की बीजेपी शायद केरला बीजेपी जैसी इन दैट स्टेट वी वुड हैव सीन, वो रह जाती उतनी ही। लेकिन पर्रिकर ने गोवा के बीजेपी को एक फेस दिया, लीडरशिप दी। एंड पर्रिकर वॉट एवर वर्क और वॉट एवर थिंग यू असाइन पर्रिकर, ही विल डिलीवर। ऐसा उनका एक करिश्मा था, ऐसा उनका एक स्वभाव गुण था। इस लीडरशिप क्वालिटी मैं स्पेसिफिकली आपको बताता हूँ कि ऐसा माना जाता था कि इन गोवा बीजेपी विल नेवर कम टू पावर ऑन इट्स ओन। लेकिन in the house of 40 MLAs, Goa BJP got 21 seats in 2012 when UPA was ruling at center. In Goa में Goa and Congress and NCP were jointly ruling. There was coalition in Goa, and UPA too was ruling at center. At that time, Parrikar single-handedly gave a strong leadership to Goa BJP, and he succeeded in defeating alliance of Congress and NCP. And that time BJP got 21 seats and BJP came to power. पर्रिकर ऐसे लीडर थे कि उन्होंने किसी को भी टिकट दिया तो ही कैन एंश्योर विक्ट्री। ऐसा एक फेज आया था गोवा के पॉलिटिक्स में in during 2012 election, and that time he, one plus point is he was good in social engineering. Means he brought many BJP OBC leaders in BJP, many scheduled tribe leaders in BJP, and many Catholic leaders in BJP. So Christian leaders in BJP, when once upon a time BJP was considered as an untouchable party by the Catholic voters. But Parrikar gave 7 to 8 Catholic leaders BJP tickets, and they all got elected in 2012. This was a vision and quality of his leadership.
That's great. Usha Vigji is also, and this was a question from Ritunag. Usha Vig has written very good work by the two journalists, definitely. But both of you can now, take us his journey as an Indian defense minister. Now, he was handpicked by Prime Minister Modi. What was the key reason? Because I believe that many feather must have been ruffled in this process of bringing him as an Indian defense minister. So can you share that journey of moving from being a chief minister and then moving over to Delhi as the defense minister?
Yeah, Maya, please.
Well, I'll take the first part. So, Parrikar thrived in this aura of being a king of all he purveys. Whatever he sees, he's the king of. That was the case in Goa. Chief minister for 4 times, virtually the most popular politician of his era, and there was always a sense of reluctance which he had vis-a-vis leaving Goa and going to Delhi. That would be a novel trajectory for any aspiring politician, make the jump from state politics to central politics. But that's something he didn't want to do. Now, the reasons for that could be when you're used to dominating a particular arena, would you like to play second fiddle to someone? That's perhaps why it took Mr. Modi 3 different calls to convince Parrikar to eventually make the leap to the center. Once it was made, uh, it was unfortunate in a way that Parrikar focused a lot on Goa, almost unsettling the person who succeeded him as chief minister. But as defense minister, I think there were several feathers in his cap. There was always this notion that the defense ministry was in shambles after particularly poor 5-year tenure by UPA, especially under Mr. A.K. Anthony, under whose regime a lot of things did not move with the pace with which it was expected. Parrikar's appearance there as a technocrat, as someone with an IIT background, was a good PR exercise, all right, but he also seemed to have the credentials for a particular job, and he had the he had this very Teflon like quality because he was not associated with any scams either. But I think one of his biggest vis-a-vis Rafal, I think it was a deal where he had worked the brass tacks, but somebody else took the glory. But I think his biggest achievement was in addressing the OROP issue, which was a several decade old issue, which was an issue which several defense ministers or governments had failed to break through. I think, despite, and in the book we mention about certain reservations which he had about the manner in which his predecessor in the defense ministry and the finance minister Arun Jaitley was trying to just stall the resolution of that issue by not releasing enough finances. But in addressing that and laying the groundwork for resolving the OROP, I think it's more than the deserved credit that he actually. Sadhguru?
Yeah. And as a defense minister, the famous surgical strike, he monitored the whole operation. He participated in the planning process of, he contributed a lot in the planning process of surgical strike. तो उनका क्रेडिट एज ए डिफेंस मिनिस्टर उनको जाता ही है. सेकेंडली आई विल से दैट अगर वो दिल्ली में ज्यादा दिन रह जाते एज ए डिफेंस मिनिस्टर, ही वुड हैव कंट्रीब्यूटेड मोर बिकॉज उनके पास पोटेंशियल बहुत था. अगर उन्होंने ऐसा डिसाइड किया होता कि आई विल कंटिन्यू इन दिल्ली, आई विल कंटिन्यू इन यूनियन कैबिनेट, तो उनको बहुत अच्छा और बढ़िया फ्यूचर था और देश के भी हित में होता था.
That's true. That's true. And as a defense minister, when he was there in Delhi, I believe that you have written that he felt, which Maya has also referred to, that he considered himself to be a prince in Delhi, vis-a-vis being a king in Goa.
Right.
Was it
नहीं,
disturbing
it's
him?
quite, नहीं, he was feeling loneliness, he was lonely in Delhi. यानी उन्होंने उनका फ्रेंड सर्कल कर्टेल किया था. ये ज्यादा लोगों से वो ताल्लुका नहीं रखते थे कि वो ही वॉज अवॉइडिंग कंट्रोवर्सीज. उनको कोई कंट्रोवर्सी नहीं चाहिए थी. पहले की कोई जो डिफेंस मिनिस्टर थे उनका जो बैकग्राउंड था वो उन्होंने देखा था और उन्होंने ऐसा ही डिसाइड किया था. बिकॉज आई थिंक दैट मोदी chose Parrikar as a defense minister to settle many pending things. यानी कुछ नहीं, files were not moving, and first Parrikar did, he cut the middleman system. यानी जो एजेंट्स थे, जो आर्म डीलर्स के एजेंट्स थे, जो मिडलमैन थे, उनको उन्होंने बहुत दूर रखा, इसलिए उनके ऊपर कोई सीरियस एलिगेशन नहीं आया. और इन दिस बारगे जब वो डिफेंस मिनिस्टर बन के गए दिल्ली में, तो उनका फ्रेंड सर्कल लिमिटेड था. दिल्ली का वो जो दरबारी पॉलिटिक्स होता है वो उनको डाइजेस्ट नहीं हुआ. ऐसा भी मुझे लगता है कि वो दिल्ली में नहीं रहना है, ऐसा उन्होंने डिसाइड ही किया था. लेकिन उनके पास जो काम आया उसको उसने जस्टिस दिया. जो उनके उपेंद्र जोशी ओएसडी थे, I interviewed उपेंद्र जोशी, we have quoted him extensively in the book. जोशी बोलते थे कि सुबह 5 बजे पर्रिकर उठकर फाइल क्लियर करना शुरू करते थे एज ए डिफेंस मिनिस्टर, एंड जोशी यूज्ड टू जॉइन हिम एट 6 o'clock. उनका पर्रिकर सिर्फ एक ब्लैक टी लेते थे और ब्लैक टी का कप लेकर वो कितने ही घंटों तक काम करके बैठते थे और सुबह ही काम शुरू करते थे. Some people were advising that आपको डायबिटीज है, आप मॉर्निंग वॉक करो, नहीं तो ट्रेड. लेकिन he was never giving time to that exercise. He was only doing work, and उनके पास सिर्फ एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव वर्क ज्यादा आ गया एज ए डिफेंस मिनिस्टर. यानी उनको कोई नेशनल लेवल पर कोई पॉलिटिकल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं थी. उनके पास सिर्फ एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव वर्क था. और उनको ऐसा लगा, एक बार उन्होंने भी बोला कि जोकिंगली ही सेड कि I was like a prince in Delhi in Modi cabinet, and in here in Goa, I am like a king. He was a people's
That's right.
man. उनको लोगों में रहना अच्छा लगता था, and that he was missing in the profile
Ma-
of defense minister was different. Yeah, tell me.
yes.
हो गया.
Maya, you like to add on that?
Yeah,
As a
ideally,
defense
ideally,
minister.
ideally, he would ideally he should have continued. He should have continued because, like I always have said in the book, he had a great resume, and maybe the the small geographical nature of this place did not did not give him scope to think beyond it. So this particular uh, stint, if we had it been prolonged, I think he would have emerged a much he may have. I think it really may have expanded his capabilities and his ability to deliver. Because वही चीज होती है कि once you know a particular place too well, you
That's right.
start taking it lightly. I think that's what happened with him.
So taking it forward, there is an incident of his. There was an alumni meet at IIM Bombay where he did not wait for the official car to come to receive him. Sadhguru, there was some incident of that he went in ordinary rickshaw.
I think Sadhguru's accidentally muted himself.
Uh, I think yes, he's not. Can you unmute yourself? We can't hear you. But this shows
Yeah,
his
I think it's back on
simplicity.
track.
Yes.
Yeah. नहीं नहीं, एक बार जब when he became a chief minister second time, he got an invitation from IIT Powai Mumbai where he had studied. So वो जब गए, उनके साथ उनके दोस्त दिनार भटकर थे. He was also a student of IIT Bombay. So जब दोनों भी गए, तब उधर के जो लोग थे IIT के, they were waiting for chief minister of Goa. यानी ऑफिशियल कार आ जाए, ऑफिशियल कार से उतरेंगे, ऐसा उनके दिमाग में था. दे वर वेटिंग विथ फ्लावर्स. बट जब पर्रिकर एयरपोर्ट पे, मुंबई एयरपोर्ट पर पहुंचे, तब एक 10 मिनट लेट हो गया ऑफिशियल कार आने के लिए. तो ही डिडंट वेट, ही कॉल्ड रिक्शा, ऑटो रिक्शा. वो ऑटो रिक्शा में बैठ गए, उनके दोस्त भी बैठ गए. वो दोनों भी ऑटो रिक्शा से आईआईटी कैंपस में पहुंच गए. तो उधर के जो वॉचमैन वगैरह, दे ऑल गॉट शॉक कि अरे गोवा के चीफ मिनिस्टर ऑटो रिक्शा से आ गए. ये उनका जो स्टाइल था, ये गोवा के लोगों को भी मालूम है कि इट वाज हिज ओरिजिनल नेचर. ही वाज लाइक दैट ओनली. एंड पहले तो लोग
Yeah.
उनको मनोज नाम से ही पुकारते थे, ये मनोहर नाम से ही पुकारते थे. बाद में उनको भाई कहने लगे. जब चीफ मिनिस्टर बन गए, तब वो ज्यादा तक लोग उनको भाई ना से पुकारने लगे. But in RSS and in BJP, many people used to call him first initially as a Manohar, and उनको भी कुछ नहीं लगता था, यानी उनकी वैसी वो स्टाइल थी. सेकेंडली, उनके फूड के बारे में मैं बताऊंगा, हमने ज्यादा डिस्कस नहीं किया. उनको दिल्ली में भी उनको गोवा का फूड ज्यादा नहीं मिलता था, यानी ही वाज फॉन्ड ऑफ गोवन फिश करी एंड ऑल.
Right.
एक रीजन था कि उनको जब वो वीकेंड को गोवा आते थे, तब वो गोवा का फिश करी राइस उनको मिलता था. लेकिन पहले जब वो दिल्ली में गए, तो दिल्ली का खाना भी उनको नहीं पसंद आया, और उनकी हेल्थ स्टार्टेड डिटेरियोरेटिंग. मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि दिल्ली में वो बोल रहे थे कि पोल्यूशन का भी त्रास होता है, प्रॉब्लम होता है. ही वाज नॉट
See,
यूजिंग स्वेटर आल्सो इनिशियली. और उनकी जो
we,
सिंपलिसिटी थी, वो उनको ऐसा या हो गया.
No, बिल्कुल. He was such a simple man. We have been joined by another journalist and an author, Vani Kaushal, and she asks as to any difficulty faced in writing this book, in this writing this biography. We discussed it earlier, but yes, to
Maya
satisfy
will say.
the
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
Vani, hi. So the thing is,
yes,
we are living in politically very charged times, and writing a biography, uh, the only challenge, since we were familiar, again, maybe you missed this part, we were familiar with the subject, we were familiar with the terrain, we were familiar with the stories, we were familiar with the anecdotes. All it needed was a lot more groundwork to just get them all together. But the challenge was to write it in a way which did not leave us stained at the end of it as writers. Uh, the I think that our core effort has been to strike a balance in the depiction of his personality, and luckily, according to the reviews which have come out, the balance in the biography has been underlined, and I think that was the biggest challenge, and I think we've somewhat surpassed.
So, looking at it now, is there a legacy which he has left? Maya, would you like to answer that? What's the kind of
The
legacy
last,
which he has left for the people?
I don't have a very positive outlook about the legacy which Mr. Parrikar has left for Goa. One of his biggest uh, contributions to Goa has been, giving people hope in a kind of leadership which was never seen before. An educated politician, a professional degree from a very elite institution, a really brilliant mind which could have done so many things. But the legacy which he has left behind is lack of hope in politics, because a lot of people were disillusioned by the very fact that if a person like with these credentials could you know could not deliver on so much that he had promised, then what hope do you have in the other in the other groupings of politics? In terms of legacy, also, we have a chapter dedicated to it, in which
Yes.
even the present BJP is very uncomfortable with the idea of the notion of Manohar Parrikar and his legacy. We've introduced several markers in the last chapter which indicate how things the government has the successive regimes have tried to just move back from the kind of policies which Parrikar had initiated. So, do you want to complete that?
Sadhguru, yeah,
No,
you would like to say?
yeah, नहीं, पर्रिकर के जो बेटे हैं उत्पल, उनको लास्ट इलेक्शन में बीजेपी ने टिकट दिया होता तो अच्छा हो जाता, ऐसा बहुत लोग अब बोलते हैं. मैनी बीजेपी वर्कर्स टू सेइंग दिस. ये बीजेपी आफ्टर पर्रिकर, आफ्टर द सैड डिमाइस ऑफ पर्रिकर, बीजेपी ने उनको लड़का जो उत्पल है उसको प्रोजेक्ट करना चाहिए था, बिकॉज ही वाज ए क्लेमेंट फॉर टिकट इन पेंजिम एंड सूद आफ्टर द डेथ ऑफ पर्रिकर. मैंने लोग बोलते थे कि अब बहुत बड़ी सिंपैथी है, लेकिन soon after the death of Parrikar, BJP lost in the capital city of Panjim. So after 23-24 years, BJP lost in the capital city, in the fortress of
Which Parrikar
Parrikar,
represented?
which Parrikar represented for 23-24 years. अगर BJP was serious in continuing legacy of Manohar Parrikar, देन उन्होंने उनके लड़के को टिकट देना चाहिए था इन द बाई इलेक्शन. दिस बाई इलेक्शन टुक प्लेस ड्यू टू द डिमाइस डेथ ऑफ लेट मिस्टर मनोहर पर्रिकर. तो इसलिए सवाल खड़ा हो गया कि ये क्या कर रहे हैं. एंड ऑन अदर फ्रंट पॉलिटिकली, या इट विल टेक सम टाइम. जो पर्रिकर ने जो एक्सपेक्टेशन बहुत बढ़ा कर रखे थे लोगों के, और उनकी अगर अनटाइमली डेथ नहीं हो जाती तो शायद he would have contributed more for the development and betterment of Goa. गोवा में जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर खड़ा हो गया, that is only due to the efficiency of पर्रिकर. गोवा में पहला ईफीबी पर्रिकर के लिए ही सुषमा स्वराज जी ने गोवा को दिया, इंटरनेशनल फिल्म फेस्टिवल ऑफ इंडिया. Then all other international film festivals and other big events and big summits and all, वो पर्रिकर ने यहाँ सक्सेसफुल करके दिखाया. यानी डिफेंस एक्सपो भी, he brought डिफेंस एक्सपो टू गोवा. एयर शो भी गोवा में लाने का उनका ये था, मानस था, उनकी इच्छा थी, लेकिन वो नहीं हो गया. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Maya Shankarji and Sadhguruji, for joining us on this discussion. I do not think that we have any more questions so far.
Thank
But
you so
then
much,
I
sir.
think you had been very, very forthcoming. You had been very articulate and very upfront in taking up both sides of the personality of Manohar Parrikar. Right from as a journalist, I think you have done full justice in the book in presenting the both
Thank you
aspects
so much, sir.
of his life. And this is, I think, worth a read because biographies are something which inspires the next generation. And as Thomas Carlyle also said, that biography is the only true history. So I think you have put together this historical facts and traced the history of the contribution a great leader has made to the state of Goa and to whatever position he took up throughout his life, whether as a alumni of the IIM or uh, whether as a defense minister or whether as a leader of the opposition. I have seen that there had been a continuous, you know, inner desire for him to excel, to do something in a hurry. And I believe that is the reason, perhaps, even at the last moment when he was dying, he stood up and continued to represent the people, reach out to the people with his philosophies, and continued to work. I think this had been really a remarkable uh, story or a story of his life. And I congratulate you for bringing it out and the Penguin for publishing it and sharing it with the people. I think this is a great contribution you have made to the Indian literature. So
Appreciate it,
thank
sir.
you, Mayabhushan Ji and
Thank you.
Sadhguru Ji.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for joining us on the CLS conversations. Thank you so much.